Your son isn't going to make it through Easter dinner. It's just not the right environment for him this year, my mother said. There was a noise on the other end of the line, my sister's voice, breezy, distracted. Honestly, Hadley, it's better for everyone. A laugh under the words. He'll be more comfortable at home anyway. I was standing at the kitchen sink, holding a wet wooden spoon that I'd forgotten to put down. Outside, the magnolia in our front yard was throwing pink confetti onto the driveway, and through the window I could see Owen on the porch with his bin of smooth river rocks, lining them up by size the way he did when the world got loud. He was 5.5. He'd been diagnosed 8 months earlier. He still couldn't quite manage a sentence longer than 4 words, but he could tell you the exact weight of a stone by holding it in his palm for 10 seconds. "Mom," I said. "It's just one Easter, sweetheart. The twins are still nursing. Vanessa needs calm." In the background, my sister said something muffled. I could picture her, perched on her granite island, glass of LaCroix sweating into a marble coaster. The twins had been alive for 3 months. They had not yet been to a single family gathering. This was going to be their debut, the way she put it. A debut. Like a cotillion. "Adults and the babies," my mother went on, in that polished voice she used for hospital fundraisers and the Homeowners Association. "It's not personal, honey. Owen will have plenty of other holidays." "Okay," I said, and I hung up before my throat could betray me. Adam was in the dining room, sleeves rolled, half a bagel on a paper towel beside his laptop. He looked up. He didn't ask. He had been with me through enough of my mother's edits to know what the silence meant. "Owen's uninvited," I said. He closed the laptop, just shut it. "From what?" "Easter. At your mother's. My mother says it's not personal." He nodded slowly, looked toward the porch, and then back at me. "Are we going?" "No." "Good. I want to say I cried. I didn't. I felt that strange empty calm that comes when a long-running suspicion finally has a witness, like when a doctor finally names the thing you have been carrying. I dried my hands. I poured myself a glass of water I didn't drink. I sat down across from Adam at our dining table that we bought used from a couple in Mooresville the month I found out I was pregnant, and I thought about how many Easters Owen would have, and how few of them my mother had decided to be part of. Here's what my family had never bothered to learn about me. I do not raise my voice. I do not stage scenes. I do not write long, indignant texts at 1 a.m. that I regret in the morning. What I do is much more boring than that. I keep records. I keep receipts. I sit with things until they harden into shape. My mother used to say I was the easy daughter, which is a kind of compliment you only realize is a complaint after 20 years of hearing it. Easter had been my responsibility since I was 23. I always brought the ham. I always handled the side dishes. I had already pre-ordered a spiral cut from the place out on Sharon Amity Road, a 13-pounder, glaze on the side because my father didn't like sweet meat. I'd bought the egg dye kits for Vanessa's older girls before the twins were even a thought. I'd bought new Sunday outfits for the twins. 2 tiny linen rompers, 1 mint, 1 buttercream, with hand-embroidered bunnies on the collar. I'd ordered them 6 weeks in advance because the artisan on Etsy was that backed up. They were sitting in a gift bag in the hall closet, ribbon already curled. That afternoon, after Adam took Owen to his therapy appointment, I pulled every Easter thing out of that closet. The basket I'd been quietly filling for months. The chocolate bunnies wrapped in foil, the little wooden pull toy I'd found at a craft fair for one of the twins, the silver-plated rattle engraved with both their initials for the other. The ham went into a cooler. I drove it all to the Salvation Army on Wilkinson Boulevard, the one with the wooden cross by the door and the older woman behind the counter who always called everyone baby, without irony. She looked at the ham. She looked at the brattle, in its velvet box. "You sure, baby?" she said. "I'm sure. You got little ones?" "I have one little one. He's fine. He has a basket already." She nodded once. She did not ask why. People who run shelters develop a fluency in not asking. She wrote out a receipt and slid it across the counter, and when I walked back out into the parking lot, the sun was so flat and hard against the asphalt that I had to stand by my car for a minute before I could find my keys. On Easter morning, I made Owen waffles cut into triangles, the way he liked them. We had plastic eggs in our own yard, and Adam did the voice he does for the Easter bunny, a kind of soft baritone that makes Owen laugh his real laugh, not his polite laugh. The one that comes from his belly and sounds like a hiccup that's having a good time. My phone sat face down on the counter. I did not check it. At 11:42 a.m., it buzzed 3 times in a row. I let it. I made coffee. I let it ring. I scrambled eggs. I let it. At noon it rang, and I answered because I knew what kind of phone call that would be, and I wanted to be the one to hear it cold. Hadley. My mother. Where is the ham? That was it. No good morning. No. He is risen. No happy Easter to Owen, who is your grandchild, whether or not you put him in your family photo. Just an inventory question, the way you'd ask the caterer. You said it was adults only, I said. I asked where the ham was, and I told you what you said. There was a long silence. Then my sister, in the background, sharp. Are you kidding me, Hadley? I hung up. I put the phone back down, face down. I went into the living room, where Owen had built a long line of plastic eggs from the hall closet door to the coffee table, and I sat on the floor next to him, and I let him put one in my hand. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. He pressed the egg into my palm and closed my fingers around it like he was teaching me a small religion. The texts came in waves over the next 48 hours. My sisters were the meanest, real adult of you to ruin Easter for my newborns. You couldn't just put him in a quiet room for an hour? Mom is in tears. That last one stopped me, because I doubted it and I missed her at the same time. My mother sent only one text. Late Monday night. You used to be the one I could count on. I didn't answer either of them. Not because I didn't have answers, because every answer I had would be misquoted by the end of the week. What my family didn't know, what they had never thought to ask, was how long I had been counted on, and for what. When my father had his back surgery 5 years earlier, I had set up a recurring transfer from my checking account to my parents' joint account, $800 a month. I called it utilities in my app because I couldn't bring myself to write what it actually was. It was their mortgage shortfall. My father had taken a buyout from the bank a year before the surgery, and the math on their 30-year never quite worked out after that. I had $800 I didn't need every month, and they had $800 they did. I never told them. I let my mother believe my father had figured it out. I let my father believe my mother had. They had a shared bank statement they had not actually read together in years. That is the kind of thing that becomes true in a marriage of 41 years. You stop reading the mail. You let the woman who calls herself reasonable file it. There was more. When Vanessa and Garrett had been trying for a second child for 4 years and finally accepted that they needed IVF, the bill was $31,000 for the package my sister wanted. The one with the genetic screening and the boutique clinic in Valentine with the lavender candles. She'd cried on the phone to me. She'd never cried to me before about anything. She said they couldn't afford it. She said she was 40 and time was bleeding out of her. I wrote her a check the next morning and asked her not to tell anyone. She didn't tell anyone. She didn't tell anyone. Not even Garrett. As far as Garrett knew, my parents had given them the money out of a retirement account. As far as my parents knew, Vanessa and Garrett had refinanced. The twins were not abstractly mine, but they had been built in part with my checking account, and now their first Easter was a family event I had been edited out of. I did not feel righteous about this. I never felt righteous about money I gave to people I loved. That was the entire premise of giving it. You give it because the act of giving is the thing, not the receipt. But the moment my mother said Owen could not come to the table because his hands flapped when he got happy, the premise revised itself. The premise became, very quietly, this: if I am going to be edited out of the photo will not be paid for by me. On Tuesday morning, I logged into my bank app. I canceled the recurring transfer to my parents' account. I did not write a note. I did not send a warning. I just stopped the bleed. Then I opened a fresh document on my laptop and started a spreadsheet, the way I do when I'm trying to make sense of something my body already knows. 5 years of mortgage transfers. $31,000 for IVF. Last year's plumber bill at my parents' house, I'd quietly Venmo'd. The trip to the ER with my father, the spring before. $2,200 in copays I'd put on my card and never asked back for. Vanessa's second baby shower, which I'd hosted at a restaurant in Dilworth and paid for entirely because she said she didn't want to do another one in a backyard. Garrett's bachelor weekend in Nashville 8 years earlier. $3,000 I'd loaned him that had never come back. The Christmas my mother had a small surgery, and I'd hired her a home aide for 2 weeks. The car repair last fall I'd covered for my father because he was embarrassed in front of the mechanic. I stared at the number when the spreadsheet finished. $63,800. A number with the shape of a down payment, the shape of a year of preschool, with specialized therapy for a boy whose hands flap when he gets happy. Adam looked over my shoulder. He whistled. The long, low one he does when he's trying not to say something stupid. That's a lot, he said. Yeah. What do you want to do with it? Spend it on us? He kissed the top of my head. About time. The twins' baptism was scheduled for the first Sunday in May at the Methodist Church on Providence Road, the one my mother had been attending since I was in the 2nd grade and had charmed into letting Vanessa skip ahead in the baptism waitlist. The invitation arrived in the mail on a thick cream cardstock from a stationer in South End. Garrett's mother had hand-addressed them. Mine read, Hadley and Adam in lavender ink. Owen's name was not on it. I held the invitation in the kitchen for a long time. Adam came in. He read it over my shoulder. He didn't speak. They did it again, I said. Yeah, on the invitation. Yeah. I put the invitation on the counter. I went and made tea. I came back. I looked at it again. We're going, I said. He raised an eyebrow. Not to celebrate, I said. To finish. He nodded. Okay. I spent the next 3 weeks the way I'd spent the 3 weeks before my wedding. I made lists. I printed things. I went to my credit union and asked the woman at the desk to print 5 years of statements with the recurring transfers highlighted. She did without asking. She slid them across the counter in a manila envelope, and she said, Have a nice day, sweetheart. And I said, I plan to. I called the IVF clinic. I asked them very politely for an itemized record of the payment I'd made on behalf of my sister, with the date and the wire confirmation. They emailed it within the hour. I printed it. I clicked it to the back of the statements. I called my mother twice during those 3 weeks, both times to ask innocuous things. Did she still want me to bring deviled eggs? Did she want the church bulletin printed at the place I always used? Did she need help with the after reception at her house? She said yes to all of it, the way she always did. She did not ask about Owen. I noted that too. The Saturday before the baptism, I told my mother we wouldn't be coming to the family lunch she was hosting after the church service. Owen had a sensory thing, I said, and we had a therapist appointment we couldn't move. She sighed. The same long sigh she'd been sighing at me since I was 9. We'll see you at the church then, she said. Wear something nice. I wore navy. Adam wore a gray suit he bought for his own father's funeral the year before because he doesn't believe in buying new clothes for events that don't matter. We left Owen with our neighbor, a retired kindergarten teacher named Beverly, who let him line up her grandchildren's Matchbox cars on her hearth and made him quesadillas cut into triangles. He waved at us from her front window. He didn't wave often. He waved at us. We were 15 minutes early to the church. My mother had told everyone the service started at 11. It started at 11:30. She liked to pad. She liked to herd. We took a seat in the third pew on the left, the one with the chipped molding where my father had carved his initials at 12 and never been caught. My mother spotted us as she came in. She was wearing the cream suit, the one she saved for what she called milestone Sundays. She lifted her hand in a small wave. I returned it. Vanessa came in next, Garrett behind her. The twins in matching gowns my mother had clearly purchased, lace at the hem, ribbons at the wrist. They were so small they looked like loaves of bread in white. I watched Vanessa hand one of them to my mother and the other to Garrett's mother, and I watched something in my mother's face do the thing it always did with babies, the soft yielding that I had once mistaken for love. It was love. It was just love rationed by criteria I had failed to meet. The service was short. The pastor was kind. He said the babies' full names. He said the parents' full names. He said the grandparents' full names. He did not say mine, but then I was not on the program. After the baptism, the families clustered at the front for photos. My mother turned and motioned to me, and I went, and Adam went, and the photographer arranged us in a configuration my mother dictated. Vanessa was holding one twin. Garrett was holding the other. My mother was beaming. My father had his hand on my brother-in-law's shoulder. I stood at the end of the line. Adam stood at my end. The photographer counted to 3. The shutter clicked. In the photo, which I have now, I am not smiling. We went back to my mother's house for the lunch I had said we weren't coming to. My mother had not, apparently, registered the change in plans, or she had not believed me, or it didn't matter. The car parked itself there the way cars do when they've been pointed in one direction for 32 years. Adam looked at me when I turned off the engine. "Ready," he said. "Bring the folder." The house smelled like cinnamon and ham, the ham being a fresh one she'd ordered after I hadn't delivered mine. The dining room had been set for 14. My place card was at the far end by the window. Adam's was next to it. There were no high chairs. There was no place for Owen, which made sense because Owen wasn't there, but also there had been no place set even hypothetically. I noticed that. I let it sit on the inside of my chest for 30 seconds, the way you let an ice cube melt on your tongue. My sister hugged me. She smelled like baby and diptyque. "I'm so glad you came," she said. "Mom said you weren't going to." I changed my mind. "That's good. That's really good." She lowered her voice. "I want to say thank you, by the way, for coming. Even after the Easter thing. Mom and I have been talking about it. We feel awful." I didn't answer. I looked at my mother across the room. She was holding one of the twins and laughing at something Garrett's father said. I let my sister stand there with her unfinished thank you. I waited. She drifted away. Eventually, the way people do when an apology isn't accepted on contact. We sat down to eat. The food was beautiful. My mother had made the deviled eggs herself this year. The ham was honey glazed. The rolls were the brown and serve ones. From Harris Teeter's she always pretended were homemade. My father lifted his glass and said grace and thanked God for new beginnings and growing families. When he was done, I lifted my own glass. "Before we eat," I said, "I'd like to say something too." My mother smiled. She thought, I could see it that I was about to apologize. She had always read my quietness as the prelude to my coming around. "For 5 years," I said, "I have transferred $800 a month into your account." The room paused. "Mom," I said. "Dad, that number on your statement labeled utilities, that's not utilities, that's me. 60 months, $48,000. My mother set her fork down. "That's not my father started. I have the statements," I said. I lifted the manila envelope onto the table. I split out the first stapled set. I placed it next to the ham. 5 years of transfers every first of the month, all from my account, none from anywhere else. Vanessa was looking at our mother. Our mother was looking at the envelope. "I never told you," I said, "because I didn't want it to feel like a loan. I wanted it to feel like a gift. I wanted you to be comfortable. I didn't need you to thank me, but I did need you to not edit my child out of your photo. That was the only thing I needed, and I never thought I'd have to say it out loud." Hadley, my mother said, "I'm not done." I slid the second stapled set out of the envelope. "Vanessa." She looked up. Her face was the color of the linen napkins. "The IVF," I said. "All of it. The $31,000. I paid the clinic directly. I have the wire confirmation. It was not a loan from Mom and Dad's retirement. It was not a refinance. It was me." Garrett's fork hit his plate. The sound was very small and very loud. "You told me, Mom and Dad," he said. "They didn't have it to give," I said quietly to him. "They didn't have anything to give. They have been operating on my mortgage transfers for 5 years. Garrett looked at his wife. His wife was looking down at the babies, asleep in their bassinet by the sideboard. She did not look up. "I want to be very clear," I said. "I am not telling you this to ask for any of it back. I never wanted it back. I am telling you this because on Tuesday after Easter, I canceled the mortgage transfers, and the IVF was already paid for, so there is nothing left to cancel on that one. I am telling you this so you can plan. I'm telling you so the next time you make a decision about who belongs at the table, you can make it knowing what the table costs and who has been paying for it." The babies slept on. The ham cooled. My father took his glasses off and put them back on. He looked at me the way he used to look at me when I was small and had brought him something I had built, except that this was the inverse of that look, the after photo of it. "You should have told us," my mother said. The same line, exactly the same line, that I had imagined she would say and which I had practiced not flinching at. "Why?" I said. So you could have what?" "Planned." "You did plan," I said. "You planned for Easter." "Hadley, that is not fair." "Mom." I leaned forward. I kept my voice low. "You told me on the phone, in front of my sister, that my son was not the right environment. You did not call it a sensory accommodation. You did not call it a hard year. You called it the wrong environment. Like he was a contaminant. He is 5. He flaps his hands when he is happy. He hums when he eats things he likes. He counts the rocks on my porch by weight. He is my son, and he is your grandson, and you decided he didn't belong in the room because his joy is loud." My mother's mouth was open. Her hand had gone to her pearls, the same gesture she'd been making since I was born. "He doesn't even know," she said. "He wouldn't have known. He wouldn't have to," I said. "I would have known. I would have sat at your table holding the absence of him and called it a holiday. I am done doing that." Vanessa, when she finally spoke, surprised me. Her voice was thin. "Did Garrett know about the IVF money?" "No." She nodded once. "You should have let me thank you," she said. "You didn't need to thank me," I said. "You needed to let my son come to Easter." She looked at the babies. She looked at me. Her face did the thing my mother's face did. I do not know what passed through her in that second. I do not need to. We sat there for another long moment. The ham went on cooling. The grandfather clock my parents had inherited from my father struck the half hour. My father pushed his chair back from the table. "What do you want from us?" he said. It was the most honest thing he had said in years. He wasn't being defensive. He was asking. "I want you to call your grandson on his birthday," I said. "I want you to ask his name out loud sometimes. I want you to stop calling his joy a behavior. I want you to know that you cannot pay me back, because I never gave it as a loan, and I am not in the business of inventing one in retrospect. I want you to stop treating my child like an inconvenience to the photograph." Adam, beside me, hadn't said a word the whole time. He didn't have to. He was a presence in the room, and that was enough. Hadley. My mother again. Soft. "Please don't do this." "I'm not doing anything," I said. "I'm telling you what I've done. There is a difference." I stood up. Adam stood up. I gathered the folder back into its envelope. I left the statements on the table. They were copies. I had originals at home. At the door, my mother caught my sleeve. "When can we see Owen?" she said. Her voice cracked on his name, which she rarely said. "When you can use his name in a sentence that isn't about logistics," I said. "And when you can say it 3 times in a row without your face doing the thing it just did." She let go. We drove home in a silence that was not heavy. Adam reached over once and put his hand on the back of my neck, and I let it stay there. The dogwoods on Providence were just starting to lose their bracts, and the petals were drifting down across the windshield like something the city was doing on purpose for us. I thought it was over. It wasn't. 2 weeks later, I went to my mother's house for the first time since the baptism. She had not called me, but my father had, and he had asked, in the small, careful voice he'd developed in the last decade, whether I would come pick up a box of my grandmother's things that my mother wanted me to have. My grandmother, my father's mother, had died 11 years earlier. She had left specific items to specific grandchildren. There was supposed to be a ring for me, a simple gold band with a small sapphire she had worn on her right hand my whole life. She had told me when I was 22 and she was 86 that it would be mine, and she had told my mother the same thing in writing. I had asked about it once, the year after she died. My mother had said it was in the safe. She would get it to me eventually. 11 years had passed. I had stopped asking around year 4. I drove over on a Saturday. My mother met me at the door with the box. Her eyes were puffy. She had clearly been preparing for the visit. There was a tray of cookies. She knew I wouldn't eat them. I took the box home. I went through it on my dining table. There were photographs, 2 embroidered handkerchiefs, a small enameled pin shaped like a swallow. There was no ring. I called Vanessa. I never called Vanessa. She picked up on the second ring. "Hey," she said, and her voice was a chord I hadn't heard in a long time. "The sapphire ring," I said. "Grandma's. Do you know where it is?" There was a pause. Not a guilty pause. A worse pause. A confused pause. "What ring?" she said. "Grandma's right-hand ring. The gold band with the small sapphire. She left it to me." The pause again. Longer. "Hadley." Her voice had gone careful. "Mom gave me that ring when I had the twins. For the push present. She said Grandma had wanted me to have it because I was finally a mother of more than one." I did not say anything for what must have been 10 seconds. I could hear her breathing on the other end. I could hear, in the background, one of the twins make the small mewling noise that newborns make in their sleep. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice cracked. "Hadley, I didn't know. She told me I didn't know." "It's okay," I said, and I meant it, because she had not stolen it. My mother had. My sister had only worn it. "Do you want it back?" Vanessa said. "I'll bring it. I'll bring it tonight." I thought about that. I thought about it for a long time. I thought about my grandmother's hand, knotted with arthritis, the sapphire turning sideways on her finger because she had grown too thin in the end. I thought about how she had taken it off and put it in my palm one afternoon when I was 22, and how she had said, "When you are a mother, this comes to you." She hadn't said, "When you have a certain number of children." She hadn't said, "When you have the right kind." She had said, "When you are a mother." I had been a mother for 5.5 years. "Yes," I said. "Please." Vanessa drove it over that night. She handed it to me in a small velvet pouch at my front door. She didn't ask to come in. She didn't ask about Owen. She didn't try to make a moment of it. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I am really, really sorry." I took the pouch. I closed my fingers around it. "Okay," I said. She left. I closed the door. I went into the kitchen, where Adam was making Owen's bedtime peanut butter toast, and I held the ring up in the kitchen light, and the sapphire was the same color as the dusk outside the window. I did not call my mother. I did not need to. That summer, we sold our house. We didn't tell my parents. We didn't tell anyone. We listed it on a Thursday in June and accepted an offer on a Tuesday in July, $11,000 over asking, and we used part of the equity and what would have been 5 more years of mortgage transfers to put down on a small craftsman bungalow outside of Asheville. 20 minutes from the autism center that had a 6-month wait list Owen was now near the top of. The bungalow had a porch with a wooden railing. Owen could line his rocks along. It had a yard with a sycamore. It had a kitchen window that looked at a ridge of blue mountains that turned purple at sunset. And I would later learn this kind of light is the reason people move to the mountains and don't come back. We moved in late August. The movers were done by 4. We ate pizza on the living room floor. Owen lined up his rocks on the porch railing in order of weight, which only he understood, and Adam and I sat on the front steps with a bottle of wine we'd been saving for no occasion in particular, and the cicadas did their long, warm song. And somewhere down the hollow, a neighbor was playing bluegrass on what sounded like a real porch banjo. My mother eventually figured out we had moved. A cousin told her. She left a voicemail. I did not return it. She left another. I did not return that one either. My father wrote me a letter that I read twice and put in a drawer. It was not an apology. It was a letter. There is a difference, and I had finally learned to tell. In September, I started a part-time consulting practice from the second bedroom. Adam's company had let him go remote. Owen started at the Autism Center 3 mornings a week. He came home with a sticker chart and a vocabulary of 14 new words, including the word mountain, which he said while pointing out the kitchen window with great seriousness, as if he were naming the thing for the first time in the history of the world. In a way, he was. I wear the ring on my right hand now. The sapphire faces the sky. Sometimes I think about that Easter, and the phone in my hand, and the magnolia outside the window, and the way my mother said his name like a small accounting problem. I do not feel angry anymore. I feel something closer to gratitude, which is the strangest part of the whole story, and the part I do not know how to explain to people who haven't been through it. I am grateful for the phone call. I am grateful she said it out loud. I am grateful she made it impossible to keep pretending. A family is not a photograph. A family is who is left in the room when the photograph is taken down. The people who stayed in my room are very few, and they are mine, and the table I set for them is set without conditions, and there is always a chair for the boy who counts the rocks.